What's up guys and welcome back to the channel. I'm Andy the Middle Aged Gamer and this is the Tokyo Marui P226 E2 review. Now, I've had enough time to put about 1,000 rounds through it, plinking away. I've taken it to a few games, so I'm able to see its strengths, weaknesses and just pretty much okay performances. So, with that being said, let's dive into this awesome pistol. Firstly, by asking ourselves, what is the 226? Well, the 226 was the full-size steel frame, steel slide pistol entered into the XM9 trials back in 1985. As we all know, it didn't get adopted by the US military. That was the Beretta M9. But it was successfully adopted by the German Navy and also went on to be adopted by many special forces and special services such as the FBI, etc., throughout its entire lifetime. Now, the E2 is their final version. It was entered into service, as we would say, or to the customers at SHOT Show 2010 and features their enhanced ergonomics, hence the E2. And as you can see, the grip is much thinner, which would pull the trigger back about 13 millimeters to the shooter, which is a lot better. You get a better, ergonomics. So with that being said, let's take a look. Move that out of the way for now. And let's take a look at this awesome pistol. Now, straight off, this being Tokyo Marui, this is a polymer build gun. But there is a lot of metal in there, and we'll show you that as we take it down. And if you've ever fired a P320, you know that they're all polymer framed. It feels very much like a polymer frame pistol rather than just a plastic gun, if you get what I mean, which is really good. Now let's start with the magazine. So we can pop that out. We can put our lovely pistol here. Now, with the E2 from Tokyo Marui, it was their final P226 and featured many upgrades that was needed. As the rail version suffered with slide locking issues, it would eat itself apart, and basically it had some firing pin issues as well. So we'll go over those as we take down the gun. But also one of the problems was its leaky mags. Now the original mags had a split right the way across the middle, and those two halves together would leak from the middle. And so with the E2, they released the new second generation mags, which instead feature a hex screw here at the bottom that holds this steel base plate on. And that is great. Now, obviously, you don't get the bullet hole marks here on the back, but you do get the lovely 6 hour 9mm there, and made in Japan on the other side. It's a lovely heavy mag and does actually lend credence to this gun. Now, moving to the grip, the enhanced ergonomics means instead of having grip panels on either side and screwed in, this had a complete wraparound grip that would be equal on both sides. Now in 2010, you see the new Sig Sauer logo, which if I can try and get that in frame for you, there you go. You can see nicely etched into the grip here. The grip itself, the stippling, is smoothish, but it's nice. It's comfortable, especially for us airsofters. Now, the weight of this gun with the magazine in is heavy, and without it, it's not that much different, believe it or not. But it's really good. The magazine button is perfect. You can press it and it drops freely in the magazine, which is nice. You feel as it goes up a bit of resistance as it goes in, which is very nice, having that little spring or leaf spring suspension in there to hold it rigid. There's no rattle, which is another good thing, especially if you're trying to do some sneaky stuff in airsoft. Now, moving up, as you can see, with this lovely bow cut into it, gives you, which we saw on the Sig Legion series, it gives you that just better ergonomics. It's not cutting in to your side of your finger, which is brilliant. And this being a double and single action, you get a lovely trigger. It's a slightly wider trigger face than you'd be used to on something more curvy or more ergonomic like a 1911, but you do get this lovely pull where there's like 2 mil of play straight there, and then you start pulling the hammer back in double action mode. Enough to go bang. It's a lovely clean break. Now, you can drop the slide, and now you're into single action mode. The reset is right there, so it's shorter travel than the standard rail for its trigger, and the brake is just there. There's no wall, but it's like halfway distance travel back. As you can see, so it's like halfway back, then boom, you just hit it. The wall is just so smooth, you really don't feel it. Now, this gun does feature the decocker, which just pull down to do it. You know, it's quite nice and easy. And as you can notice, the hammer hasn't gone fully home, meaning that you have much more travel now before you can pull that hammer back, and it just makes it a lot more easier. So we remove that mag now. We can drop that slide and make the gun safe again. You do get your, how would I say, lever takedown on there, and we do get the nice Picatinny rail up front. Now, the original 226 didn't have any rail system. It was just a very curvy slide, as you would say, nicely beveled and frame, but didn't actually feature any rails or modern stuff that we've come to learn from in the late 90s, early 2000s. It wasn't until that time that they started to mill in the Picatinny rail, as that became the standard. I guess they were waiting to see which one would. As HK did their own proprietary, these guys went with theirs. Now, if I bring that up, you have your Sig Sauer P226 lovely engraved into the slide there at the front. You do feature a metal front sight and a metal guide rod, which is really good. You've got the great serrations at the back for overhand or standard slingshot. It's entirely up to you. Now, your hammer, full metal, which is really good. I do love the curvy, the metal rear sights as well. Now, this version is not like the Tokyo Marui, where you can purchase a separate rail. I'm not sure if that same rail, because it features the same two screws that screw into the base of this, I'm not sure if you can use that optics mount to put an RMR on this, because this gun would look awesome with an RMR on it. Now, on the other side, you do have the 9mm para on the side of the chamber there. The actual extractor is molded into the slide, which is a bit sad, whereas the gun that would come out a year later, the USP, has a full metal extractor, a separate piece, which is kind of cool. At the end here you have the E2, which helps you identify that this is the E2 version, and you do get the Tokyo Marui markings here and your serial number down there, which is kind of cool. But that's basically it for markings. I mean, the gun itself is a beautiful gun. We really cannot falter this gun. It is just an absolute beautiful piece of kit. So let's get it set up and let's take it out and chronograph it. Okay, I'm using green gas and 0.25 gram BBs. One more. There we go. Okay. So, out the box with green gas on the custom, I would say stock internals, not custom, but definitely could do with some customization there. It's not bad though. At 260, it's still above the minimum request for CQB, which is where I will be using this mostly, so that's kind of cool. Okay, so let's step it back to 10 meters and let's see what the grouping size is. Okay, with that, 10 shots. That's not bad though. With 2.5s, it's got a really good grouping there. You're talking about 2 inches across by 3 inches. Size of hand comparison. Yeah, that is awesome. Okay, so time for the Texas Star. Let's see what we can do. Again, one thing to remember, the size of the plates are very tiny. They are literally, you're looking about 2 inches, I think, if I remember rightly. So, yeah, let's step it back and let's see what she's like for a real accuracy. No joke, last shot, perfect, awesome. Okay, well, again, another interesting chronograph. One thing I have noticed with this gun, she really hates .2s. She overhops 2s too much. And I would say, even with the hop virtually off, and I'll show you that with the disassembly, I've not got very much hop on, and it's still overhopping .2. So if you're going to buy this gun, run 2.5s through it. It's perfectly fine. And yes, this gun does run great with green gas. Although when we get to the 3 months of the year here in the UK that get really hot and sweaty and clammy, drop it to Neutral 1 because I guarantee it'll work at that point. That's a personal guarantee, not a financial guarantee, guys. Just to let you know. Now, let's take a look at the inside and see what they did. So, nothing in the chamber. Drop that mag. Now, to disassemble, it's quite simple. We leave the slide locked back. We just pull down on this metal takedown lever and drop the slide. And we got an idiot driving by at ridiculous speeds. I love people today. Now, one of the things you can see here is many of the improvements to the internals. Okay. Now, the controls here, these are all steel. And yes, even this. Now, as you can see, this is a thin, as I said in the USP review, when they made this gun, you can see the slide locking bar here that would lift up and lock the slide on. It's very thin, but it is steel. One of the improvements over the railed edition was the improvement of the materials used in this, and being steel, that's great. You do get your trigger spring here at the front, little design system. It's kind of cool. And you do get your very wide. As you can see, it's more of an angle, just like the USP for the striker in there, the nice silver striker. But you do get that, and your trigger reset bar there. As you can see, it goes up, it pushes it down, etc. to reset your trigger. It's kind of cool. But yeah, it's a great frame. Now, this being polymer, you can see all this from here all the way back is a metal insert that goes all the way down into the main frame here and supports your gun. It gives you a lot more rigid. There is a metal slide kit, and as I said in my initial unboxing, I'm currently looking to purchase one and do a video on that if you guys are interested. So please let me know in the comments below. So yeah, you can see how it screws in here, and I believe there's a pin here at the back that will hold this whole, how would I say, modular system here that can be pulled out and dropped into a steel frame if you wish. But to be honest, with the way that they've layered the actual, plastic, the polymer on this, whatever you want to call it, it's very rigid. There's no bend or flex. Is there really a need to change the frame? Maybe you could get away with just a steel slide. Again, let me know in the comments which one you guys would like me to see me do. Go the full hog and maybe run into the risk of cooldown, or just go for the slide and see what that goes like, and maybe then do the frame second. Ooh, very interesting, right, guys? So yeah, this is a cool pistol in that respect. Like I say, for the build, you can see just the thickness of the polymer. It is just huge and very rigid. Now, let's move you out the way and let's talk to the slide, shall we? Now, as you can see here on the slide, now one of the things I have noticed with their design is here is your little, how would I say, block where it engages on the slide to lock the slide back. Can you see the, I can just try and get that refocus for you. There you go. If you can see there, there's a slight indentation happening after 1,000 rounds. You can see how it's impacted on that. And believe it or not, the first 500 rounds was run on Neutral 1. I've only been using green gas for the last 500, but that's been there since the very beginning. I've not seen any massive damage to this gun through it. And if you ever do, you can always buy a new blowback housing and just drop it in. It's not hard to do. Now, let's see about getting this disassembled, shall we? So to disassemble, just like the USP, we pull out the guide rod. Unlike the USP, this is not a captive guide rod and spring, which sucks really, but it is a slightly older design. So if we move that down a second. Now, as you can see, your hop and inner barrel is nice, compact. Now, I'm not sure if we can get it in, but if we can see that, you can just barely see the hop there at the bottom end. And that is literally all that's on. It's a very tiny amount. And if I check here, you can see it right there on the actual hop arm. This side is max, that side is minimum, and it's literally nearly off. It's ridiculously, like over hopping stuff on this gun, which is kind of good for those that really want to take it outside and use it to hop the heavier weights. You can do. Now, when it comes to the slide, this, rather than put full metal all the way along, they just added more material on the inside of the slide to stop the potential cracking. That is great in the molding process because it means that basically this thing's going to last you a lot longer anyway. And if you are using green gas or what have you, it's going to run you fine, no problems. It does have a very stout kick on green gas, I will tell you that now. Now, those two screws I was telling you to undo the rear sight are just there. You undo those, you can take that off, and maybe, just maybe, you might be able to use that plate on the top. Maybe with some slight modification, who knows. But they haven't seen one so far dedicated to this. As you can see, you got your lovely massive piston head in there, which was, I would say, became standard from the USP onwards. It was kind of cool. And you can see how the front sight, metal sight, has been retained by that clip there that's just in there, that horseshoe clip, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so all in all, this is a really good construction gun. We can reinstall everything quite simply. It does take two hands slightly to put this back because of the way that it goes. So once we got that in, we can now find that and we put it back. Okay, so to put that back in, you really will need two pairs of hands to do this because the way that you have to hold the spring to get it in without damaging or wearing out the plastic slide or anything like that. But the metal guide rod, steel spring, very good. Does give you a lot more, I would say, guaranteed feedback and report when you do. Now, to put this back, this whole section is your rail. It does run on this, so it's a lot more smoother than something like a 1911 that just runs with two sets of rails, small rails there. It's a lot more rigid. But to reassemble, push it all the way to the rear, lock it to the rear. Just make sure you do tap that little barrel back a little bit, make sure it's in, and that'll allow you to release the lock and put it into the lock position. Now you can drop the slide. The gun is safe. Oh, before we do that, let's do a quick function test. Yep, everything works good. So yeah, so what do you guys think of this? I myself am really happy with the 226. I've always liked the look of the 226. I appreciate that it was the Navy SEALs weapon of choice, even more so than using the Mark 23. But that's basically because the USA SOCOM team, when HK went up to them and said, hey, look, here's the USP that we've been working on. We've modernized this Mark 23 and made it even better. And they went, screw you guys, we're happy. And left them with a massive hand cannon. But the Mark 23 was a specialized gun for a specialized job. The 226 can't, I would say, replace a rifle or anything like the Mark 23 could, It did have its pros and cons, as we say. But in airsoft, this E2, it's better ergonomics. You can see the new P320 style of grip, where it's come from, albeit now in polymer completely rather than a steel frame. Unless you buy the new steel framed version of the P320, by the way. But yes, basically it's a case of this gun was awesome. It's a beautiful gun. And for airsoft use, it shoots accurately, especially as most airsofters use the 0.25 gram BBs. And that indoors, this thing it's a beast, You've got 26 rounds, so 24 rounds in the mag, which is great. These new mags are actually a bit more than the older ones. You do get a few more BBs in these new magazines, which is awesome. It's great, again, for us, the shooter. Giving you more, how to say, BBs downrange. The mags are not expensive either, around £20 a piece. They're really cheap and really long lasting. They don't leak like the last ones. Well, certainly not yet. And I've been using green gas and leaving these with gas in them because that's the thing you should do. A lot of leaks come when people leave their gas tanks or gas magazines completely empty. And that basically allows the O-ring inside, the sealant ring, to contract. And in doing so, now you've got a gap and that leaks gas. So you should always leave a bit of gas. I personally leave about a third of a magazine of gas in there on whatever gas I'm using, whether it's green or Neutral 1 or Neutral 2, i.e. green gas or duster gas. That's my best advice for anyone in gas blowbacks. Always leave a third of gas in your mag, or more depending on the gun and your climate. If you live in a really cold climate, then you can leave a little bit more. If you live in a hot climate, a third is more than enough because too much it goes the other way. You don't get that balance of the right amount of pressure. So yeah, if you are having leaky mags, that's the first thing I would do. Would just replace the O-rings of your magazines or the valves. And then, like I say, always remember to leave about a third of a magazine. So maybe fill up like these 6-hour magazines here. These will hold, shoot about 90 BBs, thereabouts, on a single charge of gas, which is really efficient, especially with the polymer slide on there. Now, if that's the case, I would fire like half of if you've got a full mag, I would fire about, say, 50 BBs tops, 40 usually, thereabouts, and leave it at that. And you'd be more than enough fine, or, what have you. I certainly wouldn't go out there and, like I say, leave them very little gas in there and allow the O-rings to, contract as the environment around you gets colder or hotter. You can tell by the actual magazine itself, by it leaking, So, ramble over that has now been done. But yeah, so like I say, let me know what you guys think of the 226. I still think it's a great gun and still deserves a place, just like the 1911 evolved into the 2011 and is basically the primary of choice for a lot of speed softers. I do like the 226. It does deserve a place as a secondary on your hip, and it will definitely be laser accurate thanks to its Tokyo Marui internals. So, with that being said, I've been a middle-aged gamer. You guys have been absolutely awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.